we've forgotten the concept of self-knowledge in our country. We have, for instance, we had a period where we had somebody at a major university say that greed was good, and he got an ovation. Anybody who understands greed at a theological level, like St. Thomas Aquinas, and understands the nature of greed, and understands that greed as a capital sin has, he called them daughters, we'll call them sons in the light of modern gender equality. The daughters of avarice that Aquinas referred to, which I'll call the sons of avarice, falsehood, treachery, perjury. These are the daughters of greed. And this is why we have so many people that can tell lies to our Congress under oath, literally perjury, out of greed. They can do the most heinous things to people. Violence is one of the sons of greed, avarice, according to St. Thomas Aquinas. But the last one, insensitivity. Insensitivity to the pain and suffering of others. To know that about the nature of greed is a very useful knowledge. And then you can understand how Enron traders in energy were laughing at grandmothers in California that couldn't pay their bills because their electricity bills were over $1,000. Greed made them completely insensitive to the helplessness of others. Imam al-Ghazali tells us, and using the Greek model, tells us that the soul is tripartite. They used to call it the concupiscent, the irascible, and the rational. Imam al-Ghazali gives us metaphors. He calls it the pig, the dog, and the sage. He said that the pig is the appetitive soul. It's what eats and wants more. One of the things that fast food manufacturers discovered was that rats, when they eat fat and sugar, can't stop eating. And so they started making processed food that was essentially fat and sugar. That's why my wife said, I'm convinced that McDonald's is addictive for people that eat there. Right? But this is a knowledge that's used to manipulate people. That he said that the irascible soul he called the dog, and what's very interesting about the dog to me, for people that have read Malcolm Gladwell or know anything about the dog whisperer, the dog whisperer, who's a man, he's a Mexican man that grew up in Mexico. He was raised on a dog ranch with hundreds of dogs. He actually used to run with them. He got to know dogs so well that they called him the dog man. And then he snuck over to America as an illegal alien, began working at a poodle shop, and now he makes hundreds of thousands of dollars. Welcome to America. He makes hundreds of thousands of dollars taming the wild dogs of rich and famous in Hollywood. But the dog whisperer said something so extraordinary that resonated with me from Imam al-Ghazali's insight about the nature of the irascible soul, which is the most dangerous of the three. He said that there's never a problem with the dog, there's always a problem with the dog owner. And so the dog whisperer, what he has to work out is what's wrong with the owner. And he said there's always two things that he finds, almost invariably, that are at the root of the problem. They don't exercise the dog, because dogs need exercise. That's the spiritual work on the dog soul. Right? St. Ignatius Loyola's spiritual exercises. Hard to do, but they actually do have an effect. And then the second was, people invariably treat their dogs as equals to themselves. And dogs hate that. If you treat them as equals, they take over. And that is the essence of the dog self. If you treat it as an equal, it takes over. And this is what's happening out there with so many people who treat their egos as equals to the sage self, the spiritual self. And they become immersed in tribulations from that, because it takes over. Imam al-Busiri, the great Egyptian poet, said that the nafs is like a child. The ego is like a child, addicted to sucking. If you don't wean it, it will continue to suck at the nipple. The soul has to be disciplined. Every spiritual tradition had an understanding of disciplining the soul. Every spiritual tradition. There is no spiritual tradition that does not have spiritual exercises. Nietzsche said, what is unique about the saint and why he is so loved and respected by everybody is because he has mastered himself. That is what we honor. He said even kings are afraid of the saints because of their self-mastery. This is at the essence of what religion is about. It is about mastering and overcoming the self. And we're living in an age in which the self has been so idolized and so glorified. My child, we did martial arts with them, and we would go, and everybody got medals. When I was a kid, only the ones that were really good got medals, but they all got little trophies. It's like, what's the point of merit? Why would anybody try harder if everybody gets the award? And they said, well, we're building their self-esteem. Religion smashes self-esteem, not in the negative way, and there are some real crimes against human nature, that's true, within religion, but it smashes it in the idol of self-esteem, because our religious traditions, the Abrahamic traditions, are iconoclastic. They are idolatry-smashing traditions. Finally, I'd like to say that we definitely have a crisis right now in the Muslim world, and we have a crisis in Islam. I don't see this as necessarily a negative thing, because I believe in the Chinese wisdom that crisis and opportunity share the same ideogram. They intersect. And so the crisis that Muslims are facing is an important one. An extraordinary European, Wilfred Scowen Blunt, who was a passionate Arabist and pro-Arab, anti-imperialist British man who wrote a book called The Future of Islam in the late 19th century. And in that book he said, I don't see the loss of Muslim sovereignty as a negative thing. I see it as a positive thing, because Islam will no longer be encumbered with the corruption of a political entity masking itself as a religious entity. And it will enable the Muslims to once again discover their deep spiritual truths. Political Islam has failed. And until the Muslims begin to recognize, I think, that we are in a globalized world, the world has changed. The Europeans are not the crusaders of the Middle Ages, which does not negate that there are crusaders among them. That is true. But they are certainly not the majority of people any longer. This isn't the world we're living in, and we can't fall back on that. Until the Muslims, and I believe this is absolutely true and essential, until the Muslims reinstate a theology of alterity, of a way of looking at other people as not only being with as much right as everybody else. And many, many Muslims here agree with me, and I don't want to mislead people, but unfortunately, the religious leadership in our communities, in many, many cases, has really failed to grasp this. And until Muslims take back this extraordinary and beautiful tradition that I fell in love with 33 years ago and has enraptured my heart, there's not a day that doesn't go by that I find amazing things in this tradition, and I'll end by sharing just one with you. Ahmad al-Rifa'i, who is one of the great scholars and Sufis of Islam, and his entire teaching was about humility. That's all he taught. Be humble. Humility, from the Greek humus, the earth. Be humble. Our Prophet ﷺ said, "Kullukum min turab." All of you are from the earth. There is no preference of an Arab over a non-Arab, of a black over a white, or a white over a black, except in piety. And where is piety? At-taqwa hahuna. Piety is in the heart, and only God knows true piety. So nobody knows who's better than anybody else. Ahmad al-Rifa'i there was a dog in his town that was a mangy dog and had sores, and this is related by Imam Sha'rani in his book. And he said that the people got so fed up with the dog that they kicked the dog out. And Ahmad al-Rifa'i asked about the dog, and somebody said they kicked it out, it was in the desert. And so he went out and found the dog and built what they call an arish, which is a little structure to protect you from the sun. And he nursed the dog for 40 days, washing its wounds and putting oil on it until it was healed. When he went back into the city, somebody asked him why he did that. And he said, "I was afraid that on the day of judgment, God would ask me, didn't you have enough mercy in your heart to care for that creature of mine that was in distress?" That type of religion it's just so missing in so many people that claim religion. And that is why he is honored. The Prophet Muhammad, and this is the first hadith that every Muslim student of hadith tradition learns. The Prophet Muhammad, and this is the first hadith that I heard from many of my teachers with a narration. I heard it from Sheikh Ahmad Jibran in Mecca, with the entire Senate, who took it from Yasin al-Fadani. I heard it from Abu al-Huda, Sheikh Muhammad al-Yaqubi, who took it from Makki al-Kattani, who took it from his teacher, Imam al-Barzanji, who took it from his father, Ismail al-Barzanji, who took it from Salih al-Fullani, who took it from Shamsuddin al-Maghribi. And I could narrate the isnad back to the tabi'i that relates it, Amr ibn Dinar, who heard it from Abi Qubays, who heard it from Abdullah bin Amr ibn al-As, who said, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الراحمون يرحمهم الرحمن يرحم من في الأرض يرحمكم من في السماء. Those who show mercy, the merciful will show mercy to them. Have mercy on all those in the earth, and the one in heaven will have mercy on you. Thank you very much.